Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the Education Decision Meeting. I'm Councillor Hannah Hockaday, the Cabinet Member for Education. If we can just go through some housekeeping information first. If the fire alarm is continuous, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwell. Don't attempt to use the lift and assemble at the Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. And I need to draw everyone's attention to the fact the meeting will be live streamed from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. And can everyone please use the microphones when they're speaking? So I understand at the moment Susie Horton will be on her way shortly, so I declare I don't have any interest, and we can double check that with her when she arrives. But just for the record, if we can just do introductions around the table, please.
Caroline Corcoran, Head of Sufficiency, Participation and Resources at the City Council.
Bev Pennicott, Finance Manager for Children's Services.
Alison Edgerton, Group Accountant with a responsibility for schools.
Alison Jeffrey, Director, Children, Families and Education at the City Council.
Mike Stoneman, Deputy Director, Education.
Lisa Gallagher, Democratic Services.
That's lovely, thank you. So the first item on the agenda is the Secondary School Place Strategy 17 to 2023, and that's over to you, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of looking at the pupil places that we need within the city, every year we review our pupil projections using a specific pupil methodology and do a return to the Department for Education. In terms of planning what pupil places we need going forward, we have produced a secondary school place strategy for the period 2017, so we did it last summer, until the end of 2023. In terms of the strategy includes the Portsmouth context, which includes the geography of the city, how that affects pupil movement, and also included information about the rise in primary places over the last few years. Those primary children are now moving towards secondary, and there will be a pressure on secondary school places, and we need to increase the capacity that we have within the city by September 2019. The strategy explains the forecasting methodology, the current numbers and capacity issues, and the secondary school capacity review, which had previously clarified the scope for expansion of the 10 secondary schools within the city. Not all schools have the capacity to expand. Therefore, we have undertaken feasibility studies to establish how we could address the sufficiency of secondary school places. The strategy includes proposals for 4 schools: Admiral Lord Nelson School, Charter Academy, the Portsmouth Academy and Trafalgar School. And the recommendation within the strategy is that, the recommendation within the paper is that the Cabinet member would approve the strategy and also approve the recommendation that the 4 schemes that we've identified, which are detailed in the strategy, are endorsed as the basis for delivering the required additional places that we would need. This is subject to the identification of additional funding, and it would generate an additional 910 secondary school places in the city. The council meeting that took place on the 13th of February recommended the funding that's required to deliver the recommendations of the secondary school place strategy.
Thank you. I know Susie isn't here, unfortunately, if she had any questions to ask, but regarding future capacity, do you feel confident that we are able to provide enough spaces, say, for a longer term over the next 10 years, for example?
We're certainly confident in the statistics within the strategy leading up to 2023. The difficulty that we have at this point is projecting further than that, but we do review our forecast every year in the summer, and therefore we'll be keeping a watching eye on that. The issue is whether the increase in numbers that we have been seeing becomes a longer term position rather than a bulge or an interim increase. At the moment it seems as if the primary numbers have stabilised at their current level, so we are anticipating that once we have this additional capacity by sort of 2023, if the continued trend of stabilisation at primary, then that should be sufficient capacity going forwards. But we do keep a watching eye on that, and if there is any indication that we're going to need more capacity for 2024 onwards, then we would be bringing forward a further paper in that regard.
That's lovely, thank you, Caroline. And the report was really great, so I do appreciate all the hard work that you've put into it. So, and as the Cabinet Member, I'm happy to approve the secondary school place strategy and the 4 schemes that are identified in the strategy. It's like a tongue twister. That's great. So that's item 3. Is there anything anyone else wants to add at all? No? Okay, so item 4, I believe that's over to you. Again, the quarterly update on the school modernisation programme.
Thank you. In terms of the School Modernisation Programme 2017-18, the appendix lists the schemes that are within that programme, and you will see from the report that in terms of the urgent condition projects, at the start of the 2017-18 programme, there were 11 live condition projects. Over the year, I think we'll see if we looked back at previous reports, a couple of them have been completed and have been removed, and a couple have been added. I'm pleased to say that there have been no new works that have been required since the last report 3 months ago, and 7 of the urgent condition projects have now been completed. So we now have 4 urgent condition projects which are ongoing, and the appendix explains the reasons why those works have not yet been completed. There are no new risks to condition since the last report, aside from to say that we have brought a bid forward for some additional condition funding to look at what we need to do in the next year, and some funding for that was approved at the council meeting on Tuesday. In terms of secondary sufficiency schemes, when we talked about the secondary strategy a moment ago, there are 3 schemes here that are particularly relevant to that strategy, which is the Admiral Nelson Charter and Portsmouth Academy schemes. Portsmouth Academy is already progressing, and the other 2 schemes, now that funding has been agreed for them, will actually begin to proceed at pace.
That's great, thank you. And so you're confident all the risks are being managed regarding works to any of the schools? Yeah.
Absolutely. We don't have any risks that are causing any concern at the moment.
Thank you, Caroline. So the recommendation to note the progress on the school modernisation, so I'm happy for that to be noted. Lisa? Wow, we're flying through this today. Thank you, Caroline, for that report and that update. And so, Bev, I now believe agenda item 5 is over to you. Unless anyone had anything to add on that one. No? Okay.
Thank you. This is the Budget Monitoring Report for Education for the 3rd quarter ending December 17. It's for noting only. And the headline figures are on our revenue budget. We are expecting to underspend at the end of the year by 61,000, and on the current capital programme we're expecting to underspend at the end of the current programme by 148,000. I'll go into a little bit more detail. At the end of 2016-17 we brought forward £211,000 of balances in the portfolio reserve. We have actually spent £148,000 or allocated £148,000 of that, mostly on fixed term posts, for example, to aid the academisation of some schools. There's a virtual school attendance officer, a teacher of the deaf, and an apprenticeship levy officer. So that's taken care of, and we're expecting that we'll carry forward the remaining £63,000 of that reserve to add to any underspend that we have at the end of 17-18. At the end of the 3rd quarter, we have 4 sort of sections within education, and the key variances are firstly within school improvement, where we're expecting a £97,000 underspend. There are some staff savings there from vacancies which we haven't been able to fill quickly enough. It's about £21,000. But the majority of the expected underspend there is actually due to increased income, where we're trading with academies, and that we are now starting to expect that level of income, which we're starting to build into next year's estimates. On inclusion support, we're actually predicting a £95,000 overspend, Actually that hides the main problem there, which is home to school transport, and the overspend just on that area is looking to be in the region of £282,000, which is sort of relies on it's mostly due to a small number of very high cost pupils, but the budget continues to be under pressure. That overspend, however, has been offset by a number of areas, mostly again income. We're doing very well with our income at the moment with our traded services. We've also had a reduced usage of short breaks, which has helped to offset the pressure elsewhere. Finally, on the revenue side, the sufficiency, participation and support budget is expected to be £53,000 underspent, and that again is mainly due to staff vacancies and additional income. If we move on to the capital programme as it's currently set out, and before any new schemes go into it after the council, there's Appendix 1 on page 43 sets out the various projects that are underway. Overall, we're looking at expecting £147,700 underspend against our approved capital programme. There are a few unders and overs within the programme itself, but actually the main reason for that projected underspend is within the school condition project for 17-18, and that's where we keep money back for emergencies and contingencies, just in case we need it. So we don't spend that right until the last minute, but I know officers are thinking very carefully about how they can make best use of that money going forwards.
Thank you. And so the 61,000 underspend that we have at the moment, do you predict that that's going to change dramatically or at all, or increase or decrease over the next year or so?
Over the next year or so, this is only taking us up to March anyway, and then we go into next year's budgets, which we're working on at the moment. If I were a gambling girl, I would say that we would be likely to increase the underspend at this stage, mostly because managers tend to be pessimistic about everything that could go wrong. So they usually will find that some things have gone in their favour at the end of the year.
It's crossed.
Just to add to that, based on the work we've done recently with finance, I just echo that. We are expecting that figure to go up slightly, so it will be an increased underspend, and obviously that will be carried forward to next year. So yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Could I also just say, in terms of capital funding, as Bev has pointed out, even though we keep contingency back, we always have a backlog of projects that we can do to support our schools in terms of improving their accommodation. So any underspend that we're currently holding will definitely be spent on school projects.
Thank you for that clarification, that's great. Okay, so that for agenda item 5, the recommendation is to note the revenue and capital budget position as at the end of December 17, so that's all noted. So thank you, Beverly, and I guess it's over to you. Oh, Alison. That's great if you want to present agenda item 6 for us.
The agenda item 6 is regards to the quarterly budget monitoring report for the third quarter for 17-18 for the dedicated schools grant, which is specifically concerned with the provision of school budgets and regulated by the school and early years finance regulations. This is a report that's brought on a regular basis to Cabinet Member. The budget at the moment is standing that the majority of our budget headings are where we would expect them to be with regards to this time of the financial year. However, there are a number of pressures still within the high needs area of expenditure, which we have mentioned in previous reports. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to the outer city budgets, where we're seeing an overspend of £116,000 at the moment. And also within the mainstream schools are those pupils with education, health and care plans. The costs have increased around £270,000 for the year. This has this year been offset partially due to a review that happened within the permanent exclusion process over the summer, which identified £196,000, which was transferred into the DSG and helped to reduce our overspend position on those particular budgets. And I'd just like to also draw your attention to the fact that where we're seeing the pressures in the high needs budgets in this year, that is progressing into 2018-19. And since setting the 2018-19 budget, we have seen a number of further pressures being brought to our attention, which has increased the pressures potentially by about 444,000 for next financial year. We are at the moment working with the Education Department, and particularly around the findings with the SEND strategic review, to ensure that future financial stability in these areas.
I understand, isn't Julia Catherine, she'll be presenting a paper to us around March on the SEM review, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is there anything that you wanted to add, Mike, at all?
It was just to say that we're also taking a Paper to Schools forum at the end of this month, and we'll be talking about how we were going to have to manage the high needs block going forward. So we've got some emerging recommendations coming out of the SEND strategic review. That will be going to the SEND board, and then at some point a future paper will be coming back to Schools Forum about some concrete recommendations, because at the end of the day we're going to have to manage this within the DSG, within the high needs block, and that will need to be a collective discussion with schools about how we do that.
Thank you. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Susie? No? Okay. No, that's fine. That's no problem at all. Okay, so thank you again for the papers that you've brought to us, and so I'm happy to note the forecast, the end of year budget position for the DSG and the potential pressures for 2018-19. Okay, so that brings us to the end of a anticipated quick meeting, so thank you everyone for attending, thank you for your reports.